Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the No Woman Left Behind podcast show. I'm Rosie Zilinskas, your podcast host. Today we have the second installment of the How to Negotiate in the Corporate World series. We've had one episode so far with Joy Selden, and she spoke a lot about how to manage your emotions as you are going to be doing your negotiating. So that's a really important episode because we're talking about your emotional intelligence. Today, we're going to be talking to an influencer. And the reason why I invited her on is because she is into a lot of different things, but primarily she's an entrepreneur. And negotiating is really important in her business. And I figured the things that we could talk with her about negotiating also apply to your corporate career. So let me tell you a little bit about this influencer. She is named on Yahoo's Influencers to Inspire list and featured in Forbes, Hollywood Digest, Influencive, Medium, and New York Weekly Times. Alexandra Nicole Nolan is a self-made digital entrepreneur and mom of three from Memphis, Tennessee. She fills her days pursuing the dream of being her own boss as a full-time digital entrepreneur, business consultant. She is now a published author and brand developer. She is also going to school to obtain her PhD. And she is doing a lot of learning about the ins and outs of running a business. So that's going to be really important because she talks about some of the things that she's learning in her PhD program. I think that this series, the point of this series is for you to get some ideas on how to actually do the negotiating when you are ready to do so. My intention is also to provide a document at the end of the series with some powerful phrases that you can actually apply to your negotiating project. So with that, stay tuned with my conversation with Alexandra. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here on the No Woman Left Behind podcast show.
Thank you for having me.
You are very busy and you're a mom of three. You have your business. You just wrote your book that we're going to talk about in a little while. And you're an entrepreneur. And the reason why I want to point that out is because our audience are women in the corporate world and have very similar lives. Women nowadays are responsible for so many different things and still having to work full time. So the first question that I have for you is, what are some of the things that you do that maybe could help women in corporate to have that? And I don't want to call it work-life balance because that's not achievable. I think everybody thinks of work-life balance as this like end-all be-all when it's really life ebbs and flows. So tell me a little bit about how you are able to accomplish so much.
Well, there's always the regular things that people talk about, keeping a planner and all of, your to-do list and everything. But one of the things that I feel like it's kind of a unique way that I stumbled upon that's really helped me to accomplish so much. And it's going to sound a little strange, but, and I think I used to work in corporate America before becoming an entrepreneur. And I feel like this has traveled over into the world of entrepreneurship. So, and unfortunately, as women, we always have to brand ourselves. So in the corporate world, it's always trying to, I don't want to say the word prove or, just kind of show that we're capable. But so in the corporate world, I learned that I had to brand myself. I had to advocate for myself and all of this, right? And then moving into the entrepreneur world, obviously you have to literally brand yourself. The way this ties in is, when I'm branding myself and I'm constantly advocating for myself and I'm strategically doing this, it allows me to achieve so many things at one time versus, really going down that to-do list and going down the 1, 2, 3. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay. Every day, I obviously being an influencer, I'm posting on Instagram and doing stories. I'm writing the book at the same time. I'm a mom and a wife, and all of these things are aspects of my life. And I used to categorize them into work is work, family life is family life. And I get it, in corporate America you have to do that to some degree. But if you kind of, I don't want to say let those personal things seep into your work life, but if you kind of let it all mesh together, I feel like you're able to really hold all the plates in the air at the same time versus compartmentalizing them. And so when I say branding myself, being open in the business world with, here's my family and here's my life, right? So, I feel like when we hide that, they always say you don't know what people are going through or kind of what their life is. So when you hide that, you have to compartmentalize everything. When you can be open to some degree, and I say brand yourself, but like let other people know that you're human too, and kind of the things you're doing, you can almost like spread the to-do list across all of the different things across everything that you're doing. So I know that's a really weird way to go about it, but it has alleviated stress for me to be able to be, because I started this like, I have to be on this level. I have to show this certain type of person in the business world. And when I started being kinder to myself and kind of letting people know like, hey, I'm human like you, and I'm branded into the mom and the wife, but also a successful businesswoman, I was able to achieve so much more because I feel like the stressors weren't there, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And actually, I was looking at your Instagram, and one thing that I love about what you just said is that you have some pictures where you have your hair and your makeup, and it's obviously a photo shoot, but you also have pictures where you have no makeup. And I think I saw one where you were trying to curl your hair naturally and you look like Pippi Longstocking, yeah. Like you're talking to your husband. And I thought that was really cute because again, you're incorporating the person, not just the influencer. Mm-hmm. And the reason I like that is because corporations nowadays are trying to bring in the whole person in to work and not just the employee. So they are now trying to maybe recognize that people have lives outside of work, and a lot of companies are now asking people to come into the office once a week or maybe sometimes once a month. So they recognize that, hey, working from home has your perks. It can help you be, the parent, the mom, taking care of your household, working out, and you still get to do your job. So I think it's very relevant to what you were saying. It's kind of incorporating both of those parts of your life into one so that you can kind of navigate both of those.
Yeah, now, absolutely. And it's not an easy thing. I will say this, I'm on that cusp of the generation, like my generation. My mom's corporate. My dad owns companies. I've always been pushed to business is business. Keep the tears and the personal life out. I don't want to say be a robot, but this is who you are in this setting. And then if you need to go cry behind closed doors, wait till you get home and let it all out. So I'm of that generation, but I mean, 2 years below, 2 years behind me, that generation is more open about feelings and mental health. So it's actually a hard thing to do. I mean, to be out on the internet, being in the raw, and I have to pep talk myself up. So I say it, to say, hey, just do this. You have to train yourself, but it's doable, and it is so much easier on your soul. You're just able to do so many more things at once if you can just kind of, I don't want to say lower the bar, but just don't be so hard on yourself, and just kind of brand yourself to be an all around person. People can relate to you, and then they sympathize a little more.
Absolutely, especially if you're working full time and trying to, like, I know when I worked full time And well, I still work full time, but my kids were young. Right now they're 21, 24, so they're out of the house. But I felt that mom guilt of, oh my gosh, it's a field trip day and I can't go. And my child is asking me to go and I can't go because I have this really important meeting. Or they always got sick when I had really big meetings, and
Yeah,
it
I
just
get this.
was
Yeah.
inevitable. So that mom guilt is always going to be there, but I know men don't generally feel that guilt, so it's definitely a hard balancing act, even though you are never going to get that 100% balance between both. Right. Now, I know you're also going to school for your PhD.
Yes.
That's incredible. So tell me a little bit about what you're going to school for and what your goals are with your PhD.
Okay, so when I started my companies, I left corporate America. I think I was there 6 years in corporate America. Loved it. It was great, but I'm an entrepreneur by heart. So when I left, I first got the opportunity about, 4 years into running my own business. The University of Memphis, they were doing scholarships for master's programs, and they had an entrepreneurial focus, and they wanted to bring in local entrepreneurs to basically learn business from the academic setting, with the hopes that they can go back into the city and create these. I mean, because Memphis is a very big small business kind of city. So basically the hopes were to go back and create these small businesses that flourish. And that's why they offered that degree. So I did that degree and finished that one in 2016. And recently, some of the folks that were in that program with me, one of them said, they're doing a PhD program. Now, it's not focused towards entrepreneurship. It's straight business. But it's a completely different aspect from the point, like in a PhD program. And I had no idea. I should have done my research before going in. And the PhD, I love it, but it is 100% focused on research, on business research, on I'm taking a class that's diversity and stereotypes, more about like a management focused class. I'm taking statistics class on how to run research and read research with survey data and all of that, marketing courses. So I went in, honestly, I've had so many people say, why are you doing this? Like you've got your own businesses, is this a stepping stone? At first, it really wasn't. It was just, I have my parents, both of them, they are like strive to the top kind of people. And I thought, well, there's a degree above a master's degree, so I want that too. I don't know why, but I do. But since being in the program, I've learned that with this research and learning how to do research studies and stuff, I can really help other people. Number one, from the HR standpoint of understanding how to manage other people, understanding, the ins and outs and the psychology behind other people. But number two, hopefully create some sort of programs within our city that promote entrepreneurship. And that, because being a small business owner, either you have a lot of money on the front end, which I didn't, so you struggle to get there for years financially. And I thought there's got to be some sort of magic formula that if I can do enough research, I can figure out where you can just say, hey, this is how you start. And the percentages of success outcome are going to be so much higher. So that's now why I've gone in to do it, to just help other people in the end be successful.
Well, I have to tell you that's I admire that a lot, not only because, again, being the influencer, you are dealing with a lot of brands and pictures and all the pretty parts of the entrepreneurship, but I think you going into not only getting your master's, but then this PhD in business, it's just going to elevate your knowledge as an entrepreneur, but also your compassion for people, your compassion for helping those other people, whether, again, they're in entrepreneurs and people in the corporate world can still learn from the things that you do. And I know you have a book, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I wholeheartedly support and admire that you're going a step above and beyond in getting that PhD. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I know you have been researching in your PhD some biases that you have learned about in the corporate world or in the business world. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Okay. So, my mindset has changed so much, especially with this one class I'm taking about stereotypes and diversity. We do things on race, on gender, on pregnancy. I mean, it's a different topic every week. And so I have always gone into, I grew up with the mindset of, everyone's equal. Everyone has an equal opportunity. You work hard, work your way to the top. There's going to be some people that are going to maybe discriminate against you because you're a female, or maybe not like your personality, or have these preconceived notions about you, but you just keep forging your way forward. And, and the other people that are being discriminated against, they should do the same. And that's that. So I've always kind of had that hard mentality. Well, I took this course and it really helped me to empathize and see things from a completely different light. So one of the things, the corporation I worked for, they were wonderful. I never felt like I didn't have an opportunity because I was a woman. It was generally, my boss was a female, but there were I would say there were definitely more men than women in leadership positions, but I was young and didn't realize that. And I was ambitious and I was just going for it. Well, one of the things that was interesting is women are seen from other women and men that are not top management. They're seen as less competent. And these are studies that have been done. Men and women say that women are less competent if they're not in top management positions, but they are seen as warm. And like they have I'm trying to think, I can't at the top of my head remember the exact word, but competency was one. And then like their feelings of warmth, like this person is warm, understanding, they get me. But when that same woman hits top management level, they're seen as more competent, even more competent than men, because they've made it. And it's sad to say, but you must be real smart if you can beat a man out. So more competent, but then all of a sudden that same woman is instantly seen as cold and not warm and not relatable. And, that was when we took that class, or when we had that session, I just thought how crazy that is that, I'm a very warm person. I feel like I'm a very competent person, but there are these preconceived notions about me and about other women, especially in corporate America, that, they can be fought, but why should they even have to be? Why do these things exist? And I will say, it's not like I wanted to mention and be clear. This survey wasn't taken by just men. It is other women that we're viewing our own like that, and so I don't have the golden answer of how to fix it, but I think getting these studies out there and getting this, the data out there and just getting it in the right places where corporate women can read it. I think that we need to know these statistics so that we as women can do better for our fellow females,
Absolutely. And just a follow-up question to that, just so we're clear, did the woman's behavior change from when she wasn't in upper management to where she was?
So this was perception of the female by other people that worked with her. They did control, and they call it control for, ask to say, did you notice any kind of difference? And what that was found is that wasn't a factor. In this.
So it's just the fact that she went from, say, middle management to an upper, a senior position, and the perception of that female by other females and males changed just from her going into that executive, level. That is,
it's almost
so
like, and it's crazy. You see it on TV and on movies too. I don't even know. I don't think that it's almost like we all have these preconceived notions because what the word and the message that's being put out there. So for instance, The Devil Wears Prada. Yeah. You see that and it's a great movie and it's fun, and it's a girl movie. every girl's seen it. Sure. But in that movie, now maybe the top management woman is definitely portrayed to be all the things. but Hollywood's putting that out there.
Right.
We're watching it. It's a movie that we all cherish. I love it. I'm not saying, don't go watch this, but it's a message that is constantly being delivered. Right. I mean, you can watch Lifetime. I watch Lifetime Movie Network. I mean, and there's all the murder shows and all the things like that and all the drama, but the top level woman, if she's in a top level management, she's always portrayed to be that way. Yeah. And so, it's like I said, it's the message that's being delivered and put in front of us, and we're just soaking it up, whether we want to or not, or even realize that we are.
Yeah. And I think that's why you and I are having this really important conversation, so that we can, I don't want to say educate, but enlighten other people as to how you are perceiving your fellow coworkers. Because I know, and I've had some conversations with some amazing corporate leaders on the show here, and you can lead again with compassion and kindness. And you don't have to yell and scream at people just because you're upset. Obviously, that goes along with emotional intelligence and being able to control your reactions and all that good stuff. But you can still be a good leader, firm, fair, compassionate, and still be looked at in a good light. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll say it's unfortunate for us as females. I feel like it is a very hard line, or it's a balancing act that's harder for us, that I don't feel like men, it's even considered for men. So I used to own clothing stores, and when I left International Paper, the corporation I was at, and I felt like I was managing at one point 30 other people. And I felt like I had to be this, I've got to be tough or I'm going to be taken advantage of. But then like, the employees are walking on eggshells, and, is this even enjoyable for them? So then I try to like be more compassionate and, ask more about home life and family life. But then I swung all the way on the other side, and then I wasn't able to get the output that I needed and the productivity that I needed. It is a hard thing to do. I never mastered it. And I had my clothing stores for seven years. I feel like I got close, and I've had some employees that have come back and they said, you really inspired me, and I'm just so happy I worked for you. But I've also had other ones that said, that I'm like the devil wears Prada. So that's why that movie popped in my head. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm that way, but I, just behind my back saying that. So, and I'm just like, how do you, it's such a hard balancing act. And it's unfortunate that we have to do that as women, and that other women are perceiving us that way,
Yeah, I agree. Now, I know we talked a little bit about women being pregnant and what happens when you become pregnant. You have to take leave and come back. So tell me a little bit about what you've learned about that.
Yes. So women that are pregnant, they not only do they have there's discrimination against them, and it's more of a overt, like not a direct like discrimination, which most people will think. It's more kind of like passive discrimination, but they also are hard on themselves, and they have fear of losing their position, or so they can't really, studies have shown that they can't really, especially in corporate America, have that time. Like they take that time off, but the stress levels are there, and the worry about work is still there. And then from the other standpoint, that kind of subtle discrimination, people, well, first of all, they think this person isn't going to be as committed to their job after they have a baby. And women in general, this was another study that we did, women that weren't pregnant and women that said that they were not going to have a child versus women that said that they would. The women that said that they would, people perceived them to be less committed to their job. And so, I don't know I was never less committed to my job when I had children. I can see when a woman, I can see having children, and if you're in the financial position to be like, okay, now I want to stay home. I'm not saying that's wrong. I can see that, but but having a baby doesn't make you all of a sudden, not capable of doing your job, or not mentally there. So a lot of women that go through that are pregnant or go through pregnancy, they have this fear. The studies show they have this fear of losing their job, so they'll over compensate right up before that and just kind of go over the top, just so they can hope that their position's still secured. And I know there are laws against that are put in place for that, but it's still a fear, and not everything is as just as it should be. So I am willing to bet there are women that come back and maybe lost their steam of where they were within the organization from the viewpoints of others. So that's a message that needs to be out there and people should be aware of, because I feel like maybe top management thinks, okay, well, now there's going to be a child involved, and I just don't know how committed she's going to be. But they need to realize, from her standpoint, maybe her job is still very important, and there's going to be some adjustments, but there's a fear within these women that are getting pregnant, and they're having to deal with that too. And that's a lot, especially having children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, when my kids were sick, and I was very fortunate. So I was divorced at the time, and I was very fortunate that I had a family that gave me unconditional support. So my sister, my parents, they always were like, Mom, or Virginia or Lisa, can you guys take the kids? And they always, of course, helped out. But you are stressed out when your child is sick. And again, you're feeling that guilt of having to leave your child at home if, again, you have an important meeting, and then you go to the meeting and you're thinking about the kid. So there is a little bit of mental stress there. But to your point, I was not any less committed to my job, and I was able to succeed in my career. And I've been in the corporate world for 30 years, and managing people is difficult. But when I was managing people, I did find a decent balance. It's never going to be perfect, but I did find a decent balance between productivity. And then when we were in the office, I would go out and just talk to everybody in their cubicles, and I specifically went out and talked to them about their personal life. Hey, how are the kids? What's going on? And not ask any business questions, because I wanted them to be acknowledged as people first, and then secondarily as an employee. And we did well together. We were like a well-oiled machine. So it can be done, but it does take that little extra effort from the manager's perspective as to, how are you doing? Especially now with people working from home, you have to make that extra effort of calling people and having a one-on-one conversation. So
yeah, it is definitely an art. It is an art that I've always been ambitious, so I thought this will be a breeze, and it almost traumatized me. Whenever I sold my clothing stores, I said to one of my friends, she goes, "Well, what is your end goal and what is your dream?" And I said, all I know is I don't want to have a boss, and I don't want to be anybody's boss. I was like, I think in the end I did pretty well. And that wasn't the reason why I sold my stores, but I just remember that being such a huge, I would say 70% of the stress of that job was managing employees, and they were all wonderful. It's just different personalities. Like, I come into the conversation with my personality, which used to be probably a little less empathetic. We got work to do. Let's figure this out. Let's come up with strategies, and not really acknowledging, the other person's personality of they've had a terrible week at home, and they're just trying. They want me to empathize. They want to tell me about it so that I know that they're trying in their job, but also I've never been open, so they're trying to hide it. So I learned a lot. I did change and kind of adopted some of the strategies that you were just talking about, but that was, it is tough. It is so tough.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about negotiating for the rest of our remaining time, because part of what my goal is just to highlight some of the things that women like yourself do in your day-to-day, as right now you're an entrepreneur, but what are some of the actions, and specifically towards the end of the podcast, I'm going to ask you for 2 powerful phrases, because that's what I want to gather. I want to gather some actionable, powerful phrases that women can use. But what are some of the tactics? If you can maybe highlight 2 or 3 tactics that you use currently now to position yourself in a confident space to negotiate, whether it's your branding contracts or your vendor contracts or anything like that. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So I do actually have a chapter in the book that talks about, knowing your worth and being able to put that out in negotiations. So, I think one of the hardest things for women is first knowing their worth. I know that I bring something to the table. Like I know this internally, but in negotiations, which I've mastered it now because I have to, I do it every day. But in the beginning, people would come to me and be like, "Hey, I would love for you to work with us." Brands would come and, we would love to do this and this and this. And then this is the price. And I knew the price was below what the going rate is for, my engagement and follower numbers and all of that. But at the same time, I felt so honored that the brand was reaching out to me. I was just because I was building up my company. And so I was taking all of these jobs, spreading myself thin, and definitely not getting paid anywhere near what I should have. But it wasn't the brand's fault. I mean, of course, there becomes a lowball offer where you're just offended. It was never like that. But at the same time, it was my fault because I would never ask. It took me a year and a half just to get up the guts to just to be like, okay, I appreciate this, but this is my going rate. And actually put it out there. And it was crazy. The first time I did it, it was my going rate was double what they were proposing. And so I thought, this probably isn't, they're probably not going to take it, but I've got to start. All of my other, peers in the industry are just killing it, and they're making what they're worth, and they're not having to take on so much work, and they're able to live life, And so I did it. I just said, well, this is my going rate. And in my head thinking, they're going to come back and say no, but I can at least say, well, for a first time job, maybe we can kind of meet in the middle. They just took it. They were like, yeah, that's fine. Okay. We just didn't know, but yeah, now that's fine. And so I was like, oh, and then I get mad at myself because I'm like, for 2 years, I was not doing this. I probably could have tripled my salary, but I was too worried about, damaging the relationship. And that actually, and we did a study on negotiations, and that was the number one reason why women, and they did it across different countries. They did the US, they did India, and I believe they did China and one other country. And they were trying to get different, like how women are so different with different cultures. They were trying to look across different cultures. And that was the one thing we all had in common, was that we didn't want to damage the relationship by asking for more. Mm-hmm. And so when I started doing that, when I calculated out, I knew what my worth was monetarily. And when I started saying, this is, not this is what I'm worth, but in a nice way, it's just more commanding. And it's like, and it just, I was just shocked. It didn't take anything else from my part, but just, being very confident about what I'm worth and what it would be to work with me.
And I think one of the things that I want to point out there is that it took you a year and a half, almost 2 years to get to that level. But once you actually got there, and the beauty about that is that you were willing to walk away from the job because they were not paying you what your worth was for that particular job. And I think when you're willing to walk away from that, then that makes a big difference. And like you said, it gives you more of a commanding presence, and that gives you more confidence. Now, for women in the corporate world, how that translates is being prepared with how much you could make, and that's comparing it to a variety of websites, whether it's Indeed or PayScale or anything like that, knowing what your job gets paid, and then to your point, knowing your worth, that is literally listing out and outlining all of the achievements, what you're going to bring to the table, and then have that conversation with your manager. So there's a lot of pieces to that. It's almost like a process. You have to prime yourself to be ready for that process.
Absolutely.
Now, are there some key phrases that you are constantly using with whenever you're negotiating contracts?
Yeah, so one of the key phrases, and if I was going to transfer it into more relatable terms as far as corporate world goes, just saying, well, my research shows, I mean,
Oh,
and that translates into leverage. So not only does that say, I know what other people are making, followed by my research shows this within the industry, followed by my credentials are this added to the base level. And then not only are you commanding and you're showing that you've done your research, but it's a polite way to say that where everything stands. So I feel like that lets the other side of the negotiating table say, okay, well, we just need to give the flat. Let's not do the back and forth and back and forth. She knows what the industry is. She also has told us that she has these different credentials, that she is worth this much. So it's either we need to come back with the final or maybe we can't afford her. I don't know. But I just know saying that really just shows that I don't want to say the word weak, but you're not coming in there clueless, just, hoping to take anything that they throw at you.
well, and the biggest thing is just being grateful for the offer, right? I think women are viewed as, oh, you should be happy to just have a job. You should be happy that we're offering this to you. But men have no qualms to negotiating any kind of job and almost demanding it, but as we well know, women can't do that. But I know I was reading 20% of women don't negotiate at all, ever. And so what happens then is that translates into a loss over a career lifetime of about $2 million with investments and things. So it's really important for us to get this message out in the world to women that it's so critical for them to start negotiating from their very first job or right out of college. Even in high school, you could, start practicing those skills, but especially when you start a job or you start your own, business, it is so important for you to start with that negotiating muscle so that it can get better and better. And now for you, is it second nature now, or like, do you even think about it, or how does it work for you now?
So it is completely second nature. So what ended up happening, and I think that a lot of women can probably resonate with this. Resonate with this. I'm like, I'm getting tongue twisted on my words. My brain's going in different directions. I want to get all the good messages out. I think that resentment sets in when you don't negotiate and you just take what you can get, because what you're on the front end, you're just happy to have a job. You're happy to get that job. And like with anything, when the honeymoon phase settles and everything kind of falls to the ground, you start realizing what was left behind. Resentment starts setting in. And then the resentment bleeds over into everything in life. You're like, well, I should be making more. I'm doing all of this, but I just jumped on this number and now I've got to work so much harder to get to where I probably could have started at. And you start resenting your job and your mental health in regards to your work, your job satisfaction, your performance, your productivity just starts going down. Other people start viewing you in a more negative light. And it's just, there's like a snowball effect. Yeah. So, preventing that feeling, of resentment is huge. But I will say, you said, it's second nature to me? Yes. So at first what ended up happening is I started resenting. I'm like, I'm looking around, seeing everyone else make so much more money that's in my industry, or we go to these blog conferences, people start talking and I'm over here like, oh my gosh, like what? You just got that deal? I just did a deal with them last year and I got half. And you know what I'm saying? So I started getting really resentful. And that's when I just started negotiating. And now it is literally part of the job. I don't even think to myself, is it going to damage the relationship? And it's also, I realize the brands expect it.
Yes.
I mean, 70% of the time they know that if they ask me what my media kit, with my media kit, what my rates are, and I send it, most of the time they just say, okay, and they take that. But if they come back and negotiate, it's not far off from that.
Got it. And I think one of the things that you just said is if they come, well, they expect it. You said the brands expect it. And to kind of translate that into the corporate world, especially when you're getting a brand new job, people, HR, the HR individuals, they expect people to negotiate. And if you don't negotiate, they're like, okay, great, we got a deal. But when we as women don't negotiate, we're leaving money on the table because the employers expect people to negotiate, and men do it all the time and women don't do it. Again, 20% of women don't do it at all. But you also said when you were in a conference, you were talking to other people. So I said earlier that I've been in the corporate world for 30 years. When I started in the corporate world, it was taboo to talk about salary. Like we did not talk to, and I think people my generation still are like, what? But millennials are now, well, millennials and Gen Z employees are now talking salary. And I think it's up to like 42% of Gen Z people are comfortable talking about salary. And as a matter of fact, there's a TikTok that I think it's called like a pay transparency. And the girl that started the TikTok account, she just goes around asking people, what their name are, what they do, and how much do they make. And people tell her, and I'm just like, so, but at the same time, that conversation is lending us to have pay transparency laws. So there's about 17 states now that have the pay transparency laws, and some states are required to put the pay range right in the job description. Other states wait until you request it. So it depends on the state. But all of those conversations are going to collectively lend themselves to finally eradicate at least the pay gap. We'll still have a long way to go to eradicate the gender gap, but at least the pay gap, hopefully that will incite us to have more equality amongst all people with just, do you have the qualifications to do the job? And if you do, this is what you're going to get paid. So
yeah. And that's interesting. So in the academic world, because when you get your PhD, you're generally expected to be a teacher or a consultant or something like that. All of that pay, it's been new to me because I've been doing this for 2 years. You can go online because it's a government job, and I can see exactly what each one of my professors are getting paid. And also the professors with PhDs at different schools. So we were talking about that at our last conference. I went to a PhD conference, and they were talking about negotiating if you decide to be a professor. And the other professors were standing there just so openly. And I mean, they've been professors for 30, 40 years, and they're just openly saying, well, I started here, then I went here, and then I made this much here. And they're like, and we don't feel bad saying this out loud because any of y'all could just go look it up. You can just see how much I make. But they also started talking about how nice it is because you don't even feel bad negotiating. First of all, they said you can't really negotiate far off the number because you can see it. So they know you can see it, but you could probably get, anywhere between 5,000 to 7,000 extra and negotiate and just know that's there. But it just makes it feel better because you won't feel resentful because you know that you're kind of right where everyone else is. And then the negotiation's more expected, and, it's not bigger pay jumps with negotiating, but that there's a little bit there, and it kind of makes it more of an open game for everybody.
Absolutely. I know I had read a study of, it was a professor, I think her name is Linda Babcock, and she was saying that she was a teacher at, I don't even remember the university, but she was a teacher where all of the female graduate students had started to complain because all the male graduate students had classes. They were like teaching classes, but none of the female graduate students had any classes. And when Linda Babcock started researching it, she went to the person that was assigning all of the teaching assignments, and it was a gentleman. And he said, well, the gentleman or the male grad students came and asked me, And so if they ask me, I will give them a teaching assignment. But the women never went and asked. So it's just another example of how we women were like, well, wait a minute, why did he get it? And it turns out that he asked for the assignment. He got it.
Yeah.
And then after that, they started getting teaching assignments. So it's just a matter of us having that conversation and asking for what we want. And like you said, knowing our worth. And so part of the series that I'm doing with negotiation, I'm going to actually put together powerful phrases and what does knowing your worth mean. So I'm going to actually outline it because I think it's just like an abstract thing of like, know your worth. Okay, well, what does that mean? So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But Alexandra, I know you have a lot going on today. You're going to go meet some friends, and tell me a little bit about if you were to leave our listeners with 2 tips that you could, so that they could apply to their corporate jobs or even in entrepreneurship. What are those 2 tips that you could relate to them?
One would be speak with authority. Your words mean things, and I don't mean that to say in a harsh way, but just think about your words before you speak them. Like on the negotiation side of things, ending a negotiation or a job, if you're getting a job interview, ending it with, I hope to get to work with you all, or I hope. That phrase versus I look forward to the opportunity. I mean, they say the same thing, but one is more passive and one is more authoritative and more assertive. So being and I do talk about that in the book as well, being assertive and how it's okay to be assertive if you do it eloquently and with grace. You can do that. It will get you so much further in any job. Because it sets a precedence from the very beginning. If you don't negotiate, that sets a precedence to the people. We all do it. We all judge. I hate it, but it's a part of humanity. So you're setting the precedence that you'll take whatever's given to you, and the way that you speak and use your words sets a precedence of passive versus assertive. And I always say that it is much better to be, gracefully assertive as a female. And then the other thing I would say that I've had to learn about so much, I never had any issues with anxiety or anything like that until I, got to my 30s. I didn't even know what an anxiety attack was. I thought this whole talk about mental health and all of that was just, I was kind of like, I wasn't buying into it because I just never had those feelings. Now I know what that is. And it is terrible to live your life with anxiety, always worried. I feel like the reason why it happens a lot is because, going back to what I said in the beginning, compartmentalizing your life into all of these different things and showing what this group, being this person for this group, being, mom and family over here, social life over here, and just trying to manage. It's not that you're trying to hide who you are, but just trying to manage all these different things. I would say be kind to yourself and just let your whole life go together. Just let it be open and real and raw. And you know what? Yeah, some people aren't going to like it, but it's probably better that they don't come around anyway. So it's probably better not to have them in your life. The anxiety and the stress, the minute I decided to do that, the anxiety and the stress levels just kind of dissipate. I mean, there is some stress there still, but you just live so much more of a fuller, happier life if you're just kind to yourself.
That's awesome. Well, great 2 tips. The last thing I want to ask you is just tell me a little bit about your book.
Okay. Yeah. So The Unconventional Entrepreneur is a book that, with COVID and just with the change of in the digital world and everything over the past 10 years, but with COVID, especially in the past 2 years, the way to do business and the way to, basically the traditional business strategies are just out the window. There are so many different ways. And I feel like in the corporate world, even branding yourself, I was talking about branding yourself earlier. In the book, it talks about branding yourself and using social media to do so and all of that. I mean, so I feel like it would, be great for a woman in the corporate world as well. But it talks about how to use unconventional business strategies to get where you want, for if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, if you're a woman that wants to brand herself or kind of, take that next level. It's talking about how we've got to evolve. The world's changing fast. The business world is volatile. There's different things being thrown at us constantly. We got to be quick on our feet. We got to evolve, and we've got to become this unconventional entrepreneur or unconventional brand. So the book is all about that. I do talk about some personal stories. Being a mom, going through divorce, almost having to go to bankruptcy, how I pulled out of that, having to get on government support and how that hurt my pride and made me feel less of a woman and less of a mom, how I climbed out of that. So there are, and it's not the whole book's about that, but there's some pretty deep stories in there, but also there are strategies in there. There are worksheets in there. There's a QR code you can scan and print out brand packs and all of that. So there's it's a mix of a story, but also here are the tools to achieve your dreams.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be fantastic. So I need to get myself a copy. Where do I get a copy?
So it is going to be available on Amazon. Right now it's available. I do have them in hand. Amazon's just launching it in 2 weeks, but it is available on my website. That's www.citychicliving.com. That's my blog. There's a link right on there. You can click it and the book's there. And yeah, so you can get it there. Or like I said, December 15th, pretty much every major, I believe Target, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon will have it on their e-commerce sites.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. And of course, all of your contact information is going to be on our episode blog. So you can just go to the episode blog and Alexandra's information is going to be right on there. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think all of the information that you shared with us was just awesome because especially from a busy mom, an entrepreneur, a PhD graduate student, or, it's just incredible the amount of things that you're accomplishing. So congratulations for putting it all together and, having this beautiful life and business. And again, thank you so much for just coming on the show.
Thank you. I have enjoyed this time. Thank you for having me.
Sounds good. Thanks. Alexandra is the perfect example of someone that spent time honing her confidence in negotiating. And now negotiating to her comes as second nature. So that is key to recognize that it takes time and practice. She did leave us with a couple of really amazing, powerful phrases. The first one is, my research shows. And then you go and plug in the job title and the salary that you researched. You can research on Indeed, PayScale, websites like that. The second phrase that she provided us is, my credentials are, and then you go and plug in your capabilities, your skills, and what you bring to the table. So I think that's very key. Now, she also leaves us with 2 tips. So tip number 1 kind of goes along with the powerful phrases. She says, speak with authority. And another example on powerful phrases that she provides us is, instead of saying, I look forward to the opportunity, you can say, I hope to get to work with you. It sounds definitely more assertive and you are speaking with grace and eloquence. Tip number 2, Alexandra says that she didn't really know or buy into the whole anxiety thing until she was in her 30s, where she started being super busy. Again, she was a mom with kids, the business, and then she started feeling that anxiety. So she says, be kind to yourself and let your whole life blend together. What she was trying to do is keep her business apart from her personal life, and it got too complicated for her. So she started blending those together, and now she is able to incorporate both her business and personal life, and that dissipated a lot of her anxiety and her stress that she felt. So in essence, she's saying, be open and real and raw. Obviously, there's a time and place for everybody or for everything, but if you try to just not be as protective of your personal life, then you're going to have a little bit of time to just have relief and be able to relax and then blend your personal life and your business life together. So those are great tips for sure. Again, one of the goals that I have with this negotiating series is to put together a document with these powerful phrases. So I'm going to be compiling a bunch of information together so that we can have these very unique documents that will help you in the negotiating process in your corporate life. I hope that this conversation has helped you and at least given you a couple of tips or ideas on how you can start honing your own confidence skills, because it is a process for sure. And I am going to put together all of the components that you would need for the entire negotiating process. So with that, again, all the contact information is going to be on the No Woman Left Behind podcast website under the episode blog for Alexandra Nicole Nolan. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.